Hello, in today's videos we are going to look at VFX, so let's get into it. First we are going to start with Niagara. We are going to go through the interface and I'm going to show you how to work with Niagara overall. Next we are going to explore VFX as a concept and what they consist of. So we're going to see the types of VFX that we can create, we're going to see the principles of VFX creation, and we're going to go through these three things that are actually part of the timing, and they are extremely important in my opinion. So let's get into Niagara. So if you have never used Niagara before, I'm going to go through everything that is basic so you can understand it. So to create a Niagara particle system, we can just right click and then go to Effects and choose Niagara system. As you can see, we have different things that we can create that are Niagara as well, but for now let's just create our Niagara system. And when we click to create it, we're going to have these four options for us to choose. The default one is create empty system, which is will create a system that of course it's empty, doesn't have any emitters, nothing, but you can actually choose another option. For example, if we choose the first one on top, new system from selected emitters, and go next, now we are going to have these templates and we will have these emitters in our system. So for example, if I want this directional burst, I can just select it and add it. And now the cool thing is actually you can add multiple ones. So we can have this directional burst, we also can have this hanging particles emitter and omnidirectional burst. We can have everything, and now all we need to do is click finish and name our system ns underscore test, for example, and ns is stands for Niagara system. So if we click and double click to open it, now you will see we have these three particle systems. If we choose an empty one, we're going to have zero and nothing here. So as you see, we already have some particles here that are spawning, and we have this result. So to control the time, we have this timeline here. So if we move this handle, we're going to go through time and we can go back and forward. This is very cool and a bit different from Cascade, and you can examine your effect pretty nicely. You can zoom. So to navigate this space, space here that you can see your particle effects, the viewport, left mouse click and drag to actually rotate around a point, right click to zoom in and zoom out. So a middle mouse button is to pan. So that is actually how to navigate. It's pretty intuitive, so you can do it. And we saw that we have this timeline here, which is very obvious if you have used any other software, but next to it is our list of emitters. So here is our track and we have different emitters. As you see, for example, if I select this emitter here, which is the directional burst, we will have the amount of time that this emitter is alive. So when we hit here, it will disappear and no longer will be in the scene. The hanging particles, which are these particles here, I hope you can see them, they actually hang for a bit more. Yeah, very funny. So yeah, this is our track with all the emitters that we have created. To create a new emitter, all you need to do, there's a few ways actually. You can right click here and add emitter, and again choose from this menu here that we had in the beginning when we were creating our system. One other way to do it is go on your track here and click track. And now go to emitters and you have absolutely the same menu. And if we click, for example, if we want another like fountain here, wait for it, and now this fountain appeared here. So we can actually move it and make it to be next to all others, and as you see we have this fountain. But now we have like 4 emitters, and it gets a bit cluttered, and if you want to modify one of them, it gets a bit too annoying. You cannot see anything. So to isolate the emitter that you want to see and modify, go to your emitter and click this person here, this little person like icon here. So if you click that, now if we go back, you see we have only this emitter, and we can obviously remove it. But remember, you need to move through the timeline for it to update. So that is that. Now that we have all these emitters, you're probably gonna be a bit overwhelmed by all the settings and everything. So if you click on any emitter, you will notice that this bar here on the right actually changes because some emitters have different settings. But this is the bar where you can change all your emitters, all the settings, and actually modify your VFX from here. You can also, as you see, we have a bit of different stages of your particle emitter here. For example, we have spawn, which is not used, nothing here right now, but in update basically tells you how you're going to spawn your emitters. And here, if you click on emitter state, you have like a cycle mode, loop behavior, so you can loop this like infinite, for example, or multiple loops. And you have loop duration. This will basically, when this duration finishes, the loop will stop existing and will loop again, I guess, if you had infinite. However, we have once for now, which means it will spawn once and it won't spawn anymore. So these are the settings here. However, if we go down, you will notice that this one has a spawn burst, instantaneous. So this is not the default option for emitter, but this one has it. So this is very self-explanatory. If you have used Cascade, you probably know what I'm talking about. But this is the way that the particle is spawned. It spawns in a burst. You have 75 particles, and after it spawns, it doesn't spawn anymore. So as you see, this one, for example, the hanging particles, has a spawn rate. And the other one has, again, the burst has omnidirectional burst. It is in the name. It has a burst. And this one, again, fountain, has spawn. So everything that is constant, for example, a fountain that constantly spawns particles to simulate the water, for example, or hanging particles, which are just particles that hang in the air and they die and get spawned again. So you see how they are increasing over time. They become more and more because we are spawning more. That is what the spawn rate is. This means like every second you see the explanation number of particles per second. So this is how you spawn. And again, we have a particle spawn, which is a bit confusing because this is how you actually spawn them. But then you have this particle spawn section, which is created in the beginning when you spawn the emitter, and then it's not updated. I mean, everything here will be initiated only once and it won't be updated. For example, if we have a force that lets our particles, you see this velocity here in the omni burst particle, this force will be applied only once, which is just 75 to 400, and it won't update. However, we have a gravity here on this one particular, and as you see, gravity updates every second, so the particles are actually falling to the ground. You see in the beginning they explode, which is the initial velocity, which is in the particles palm, and then they have gravity force that that updates every frame, as you see in the description. So the gravity is affecting it every frame, so they fall every frame. So this is the different stages, and this is the different nodes that you can use inside your emitter to create functionality. And you have a lot of them, and to add one, all you need to do, for example, if we want to add one in the update, we can just click this plus sign. And this plus sign here gives you a menu, and you can actually select a lot of stuff from this menu, but as you see, if we, for example, let's go to force. I'm looking for force. Where is force? Let's just type it. So in the force, let's say I have a point force, and this point force will update every frame. And if I do something like 10,000, instead of falling, it will actually go explosion, and it will keep expanding forever, basically. And in the beginning, when I had 100, this was not happening, simply because we had gravity force, and gravity force is minus 1000 actually. So if we want to negate this force, we actually need something like 1000, and now it will kind of negate it. They will go down, but still, I mean, go in the other direction. So you need to have in mind your other forces and how they affect your particle system. So the last one is actually the render, and for the render, I need to talk about later. I will talk about later as well, but here we have a sprite renderer, and these things here are actually sprites. They are not 3D objects, they are 2D planes that are always rotated towards your camera. So they do face the camera, and if we want to see the other renderers, all we can do is go to this plus sign here, and you are going to see that we have different renderers. We cannot light, we cannot mesh, ribbon, of course sprite that we already have. So these are different types of emitters that we can use. So now that you have overview of all the system, there is another concept that is very useful here, and that is actually parameters. And let me explain you what I mean. So here, let's just start with that these are your emitters, and this one is actually the main control panel where you can actually control some stuff from here. And as you see, in user parameters, you actually don't have anything yet. So we can actually add something with this plus sign, and you have different types of parameters. And let's do a float one. And of course we can right click and rename it, and let's say loop. And it's currently set to 0. So now how can we use this parameter inside our emitters? I will show you, for example, if we go to emitter state, and you see you have a loop duration or loop delay. We can actually use loop delay here. And now to actually use the parameter that we just created, all you need to do is go to this arrow here, click it, and just type loop. And you see this is make sure this is in the user section. there is our parameter loop, because sometimes you may create a parameter that has the same name of parameter that is already created by Niagara, by the developers. So you can have the same name, but it will be in different section. For example, now we have this system section that has different parameters that contain this word loop. So in the user, choose loop, and now we can do a loop delay. And let's isolate this, and you see this is what we are going to delay. So let's cancel the isolation and let's go to this Niagara overview node, and in the user parameter section, in where our loop is, let's make this 1 second. And now if you notice, I'm playing this, and when we go, pay attention to the time. This is the time here. When we go to 1, we will spawn our emitter, that is directional burst, because we have loop delay, which is our loop user parameter, and it's set to 1. This is a very useful thing that you can use, and you can set anything. You can make it user parameter. And another way to make a user parameter, for example, if again I go to emitter state and I go to loop duration, you can actually click this arrow again, and just you can just type user, and now in this section make read from new user parameter. This kind of was confusing to me in the beginning. They can just say create a new user parameter, but if you click here, you are actually going to create a new user parameter, and now you don't see anything. However, if we go back here and go to user parameters, we have this new user parameter, which is loop duration. And this is how you can create user parameters a bit more easily. You don't need to go here every time and create it. You can just go here and you can create user parameter here, and now it also picks up what your type is. For example, the gravity was a vector 3, so it's pretty useful to actually do this. So this is a concept that you need to know and use, and again you can compile and save. And this is basically a very basic overview of the Niagara system and how to use it. So now that we went through some Unreal and Niagara, let me show you and talk about VFX in general and some theory about VFX. It's actually helpful to know some theory, because you can elevate your VFX if you know some very basic things. So this is my epic slideshow. And if I go to my next slide, this is all the things that a particle system can be made of, like, or rather a particle effect. You can use particles, you can use shaders, materials, and you can use mesh. And this is the way you can create particle systems, and you can obviously mix them all together. And the mixed one is actually how you create your very nice particle effects. So let me give you an example of different VFX and different types of VFX. For example, you see in this concept art, you have this rock here, and if you see, this rock has this mesh. This VFX obviously uses a mesh. Even if it's a concept, you basically know that you need a rock mesh for this, and then you have this smoke, and this smoke effect is created by a particle system, which can be used by you can create it with flipbook or any other. There's other ways. You can even create the smoke with a mesh actually and a shader, but that's another thing. And if I zoom here, you can see these small rocks bursting out of the ground, and they are again particle system, not particle system, particle effect. generated by particles, and you have this smoke here, that's the brown smoke from the ground, that is also a particle system. So if I go down again, you can see something similar here. This is of course a VFX that is a projectile, but when it hits, it has an explosion, and the projectile has a trail. And then we have this nice, well, you see this sphere can be created with a mesh, but also can be a sprite. So you can create it in a few ways. And again, you have a particle here, and this flare can be created with sprite as well. And smoke. Typical smoke, this is particle effects, or you can even use some mesh and kind of use a texture and a shader, mesh and a shader, which is very nice, right? And you can create this with a sprite, you can use different particle effects here, and you can use this glow here, which is a sprite, you can have a glow. And of course explosion, you have a lot of stuff like a lot of smoke. You can create actually this thing with mesh as well. If you have different techniques using meshes and shaders, so you can create a lot of stuff. And again, you have particles effects. This can be a mesh. Yeah, you have a mesh here, a rock mesh, and you have a flame particle effects, small particle effects, these particles here. This may be a mesh, this speeding thing here that shows like it's speeding towards something. This actually can be a mesh, and you can pan like a texture to simulate this thing. You can do that as well. So there's again a lot of ways to create it, and you can see different types of VFX here. So yeah, there are different types of VFX that you see here. You have a lot of different types of VFX, and you can generate them with different techniques, and you can use different particle systems and meshes and shaders, and just combine everything to create a very cool VFX, right? So now that we went through all the types, next is actually our principles. And how to create a VFX, you need some principles. You have gameplay, value, shape, color, and timing. So what does this mean? Gameplay is basically what the VFX is. Is it a projectile? Is it on the ground? Is it explosion? Is it a trail? Value is actually, let me show you really fast. If we have a look at this VFX in Photoshop, in this picture, and you see this is the colored image, but if I apply black and white filter here, we are going to notice different values in this VFX. For example, some elements are brighter and some elements are kind of not so bright, kind of darker. And we have a middle value here, and of course this is the same as this value, which is the lowest value if we have, and we have a very dark one here in the smoke. And you see how this smoke creates the contrast between our highlight here, and all these elements together has a lot of different values, which create a interesting VFX, contrast in the VFX. But in general, these pale values are, if we remove the black and white, you see this is not very something, you don't want to focus on this. The creator of this VFX concept art did not want you to focus on these elements of the VFX, but rather he wanted to focus on this kind of explosive kind of elements that brings you to the picture, and you have this dark smoke here and this very light elements here, and it creates nice contrast on value, and that is really important for VFX. So again, let me show you. This is the value. It's literally black and white, which is darker and which is lighter. This is all what value is if you just make it black and white. Next thing, we have shape and color, which we can group them together, and I can show you again the same example. So let me bring it up. Here, if I actually disable the black and white filter, you're going to see that we have very interesting stylized shapes. Again, and these shapes are actually having this white color, and the thing that in the middle, you see it has a different color from everything else. It has a bright yellowish color, which actually distinguishes it from the others. It may not have, for example, the brightest value, but it is distinguished from the others by its color. So there's a few ways you can actually draw the viewer's attention to your VFX, and you can combine them to create a very nice VFX. As you see this shape here in this tornado, if you're creating this VFX in Niagara, in any software, if you want to create it in 3D, you're probably going to use a mesh, and you need to kind of stylize this mesh, model it in this general shape you see. But you can even cheat a bit with the shader, so you can use the shader to create, together with the mesh, to create this nice shape. You see how nice. So you need actually interesting shapes in your VFX in order to be interesting, of course. And this is how you actually use color, and you can use shapes as well. Another thing is here, I noticed these rocks. As you see, these rocks are they're pretty interesting, and the smoke itself, how the shape of the smoke, how it's drawn, is very interesting. And again, here we have tried to make as interesting shape as you can to actually create your VFX. The Spellbreak VFX are really nice. Everything like the values, and here in the flame you see different values and shapes and colors, and the different colors. As you see here, we have color for poison, which is this poison cloud, and you have different colors that relate to different things. For example, this one relates to poison, and the bluish, like this nice color here, relates to ice. And you can combine them as they did here. You can have green in the inside and bluish in the outside, and you can create this mixed effect. You see what I'm talking about. You can create very nice, interesting things using colors and shape. So this is a really nice thing to look at. And next, the final thing that we are going to have a look at, and one of the most interesting things for me personally, is actually timing. I think using good timing can create epic VFX. It can elevate your VFX to just another level. And if I am going to talk about timing, I'm going to go to these three concepts of timing. This is actually what you need to know, and they are used for a lot of VFX. For example, explosions and stuff like that. For example, if you have a fountain that it's environment VFX, you're not going to use them, but later to that. So we have these three stages of timing in the VFX, and you have the anticipation, culmination, and dissipation. The anticipation, of course, is the time where you have some sign that the VFX will happen any moment, and you are expecting it. You want to create this feeling for a lot of the VFX you are going to create, you actually want to create this feeling of anticipation. You want this VFX to happen, to explode or to destroy something, right? And you can use particle effects like to indicate, or glow or something to indicate that the VFX is happening. For example, you can have something on the ground like a circle that indicates that it's going to happen, and it's going to happen. You just need to wait for it. And the combination is, of course, the explosion, the most exciting part of the VFX. You have this everything explodes, and it's culmination of all your VFX together. And dissipation, of course, is when everything calms down and you can see that everything relaxes. So let me show you an example. So this VFX artist or 2D VFX artist, let's have a look at his VFX. And if I play this, notice the anticipation, the culmination, and the dissipation. So you see it actually has a few stages. Like it goes from, if I do it, this is the anticipation stage. You see it's very brilliantly made, if you ask me. You have this anticipation and it stops, like it baits you. You think it will hit, but you have another anticipation, and only then you have the culmination. But not even that. I mean, you have another anticipation and another culmination. So you have like two. I mean, and now you have this dissipation effect here. Like everything is cooling off and it's getting peaceful. So yeah, you can see it, like it's pretty nice. Here you have a breakdown of the whole thing, and yeah, this is a very, very good example. I really like that. So let me give you another one. So this one I really, really like, and it's by Wataru Ikeda, which is this guy. I mean, this VFX, in my opinion, is just really nice. So let's have a look. Very nice. I mean, we can have a look. He even breaks it down. It's very optimized as well. So very nice. So let's see what we have here. It starts by this. It looks like a culmination, but it's actually anticipation. You see how it gathers here, and only now it explodes, and it's such a massive epic explosion. And you see this stage here, where when there is no, the main effect is already disappeared, and all you are left with is a bit of smoke, a bit of particles, and this is the dissipation. In this case, you see, yeah, and yeah, this is the 3 stages in this effect, which is, again, I really like it. It looks, the timing and everything, and you can see, even if we look at things other than the timing, you see the thing that it's in your focus has the biggest value. I mean, the highest value. This is emissive material. It's off the charts in the value, so it's really bright, while this small here is not that bright. And this may be bright emissive material, but it's not as bright as this. So you have layers again in value, and you have color. Here I don't think the color here actually are that good, but in here now this is just, you see, there's lightning like this explosion. This is very bright, and for a second, let me see, you see this explosion, this massive, like so many elements, so very well. The lighting here, it's very nicely done. And then you have this sphere. This is a mesh sphere, and you have camera bouncing the camera shake, and the camera shake is making it look very impactful as well. And yeah, you see how bright this is. You see this is not as bright because it's not as important. And again, you have a dark smoke, dark elements to contrast the brightness of the main element. So using black or dark VFX elements is really important. You need contrast. And again, you see the layers here. You have color, you have this orangey color, and you have this bright red explosion, but everything is layered. You see the yellowish color, maybe not that high in value, but it's a catchy color which is layered, so it's visible even if it's in front of everything else. Even here you see it's in front of this big, like very high value sphere, but it's still kind of visible because it's different colors. So again, use colors and values and layer everything. And for the shapes, it's very stylized tornado. It's interesting shape, and yeah, you have the smoke, the smoke, and all these things create interesting stylized shapes, and everything is very layered, and you see the dissipation. And yeah, this is one of my favorite VFX actually, and it looks, in my opinion, it looks really nice. So yeah, and again, he's showing that it's very optimized. It's insanely optimized effect. So this is something that at least for me, this is something that I strive to achieve as a result and as a level. And yeah, this is the basic principles of VFX. In the last part of this tutorial, we're going to dissect this VFX that I created a while back. And currently this is the VFX I have on this computer, and I decided instead of using someone else's VFX, I'm going to use this, even if it's a bit outdated. Let's have a look into it. So it's called NS Ground Skill, and if I open it, come on, my computer is a bit slow, I guess, and you have all these elements here, and this one here doesn't have a proper name because I actually added this right now. I just want to show anticipation. So this is just hanging particles, or rather I guess omnidirectional burst, but I remove the force, and what I did is just create a hanging particles, which I should have just summoned the hanging particles. But I had a different idea in the beginning, so yeah. So you can see that even if you start with omnidirectional burst, you can modify your emitter. So you can create basically any other emitter types. You can go here in the track in emitters, and you can start with fountain and create any other emitter types. It doesn't matter. And let's explore. So because the last thing we had a look into was the timing, and you see mine has these hanging particles which lets the player know that this is where the effect will happen. It's not really that much of anticipation on this side, but it's something that you can see it's gonna happen. And here you have this, well, it's very fast, but it starts with this, and then we have the explosion. So we have a flash, a big flash. And let's start with the elements again. As you see, I'm using mesh renderers, and if I isolate this thing here, this is just meshes. This is how I approach this effect. I used single mesh actually, and if you select the mesh renderer and scroll down here, not scroll down but extend this, I'm using only one rock. So instead of using multiple rocks, which could have been, I guess you can argue it could have been better, but instead of using different rocks, what I did is just use one rock and have like different orientation, and you can create different orientation or different like values if you use this random range vector. So before that, if I reset it, you have this vector, right? And you see that everything is orientated the same way, and if I Control Z to get back to what I did, I actually added this range, random range vector, which gives me a minimum and a maximum. So every single model, every single rock will have a chance to be orientated from on x-axis from 0 to this value, and so on, so on. So yeah, that's how I created random orientation for every single rock. You can use this same thing with mesh scale. I have like here I choose random non-uniform, and we had different kind of scales. What is this? Let's fix this issue. Dismiss, we don't need that. Let's see if I broke my VFX. Yeah, it kind of broke. I guess if you transfer stuff, because this was actually created in Unreal 4, and I transferred this project I converted this project to Unreal 5. So let's Control Z so I get back to it. And yeah, this is something that I did for the ground rocks. Then you have this burst of rocks. This is literally, I think this one is where is directional burst. Literally, you can use directional burst or rather maybe not. So yeah, here I have add velocity in cone. This is just to push them, I guess, up. And I have point force and gravity, because I want this, and gravity works, for example, these guys, again, as I said, they're not updated every second, so they're just initiated. So I have this velocity, so it goes up, and then after the velocity is over, the momentum is over, the gravity force just becomes stronger and they fall down. So this is how I did this. The ground goal is just a mesh, it's a plane, and if you see, I used just a plane, and this plane just has this texture, this shader on it, and this is just the goal. And what I did is place it on the ground like that, and used this color. So this is what I did. Of course, I have these dynamic parameters, which I'm not gonna explain that much right now, but if you're familiar with shaders, it's basically in the shader you can create parameter, and you can actually is dynamic. It's called dynamic parameter, and you can use it in your shader, and then you can modify it here. And the hanging particles, again, it's hanging particles with where are they? Oh, they're barely visible, so yeah, they're just here. And this is the, I think, for the dissipation. Yeah, they're very visible, but this for dissipation effect. And the initial flash, this is just let me see, a sphere. Yeah, a sphere with a shader on it, a glow shader, and you see it just scales over time, and you see it starts very small, it explodes really fast, and then it shrinks down. So this is this graph here, scale mesh size. So it's 0 for a while, then explodes, and it goes down in scale back to 0. So this is how I created the flash. The scorch mark on the ground is, again, this is pretty simple, and this is a plane, the same thing as the ground glow. The only difference is that this one is actually dark, so its material should be translucent to create this dark color, because you need contrast. Actually, as I said, you need dark colors in your VFX. Again, I think this is pretty self-explanatory. You have rocks, and they scale again from 0 to 0.2, and that's why you see they just scale up. You see, that's all there is to this. You have, again, random orientation and cylinder location, and of course different scale, so you have random scale. For the smoke, we have the smoke. So the smoke, it actually, again, it starts black, but then it goes really bright, and this is, again, if we go to scale color, it appears, then disappears in the alpha, and then where is it? So we have a sprite for the smoke, obviously, and of course we have a sub UV. If you don't know what sub UV is, if you go to the sprite renderer and go to material, and in the material you're going to open the texture, and this texture is a sheet that contains different textures. Like, this is the smoke simulation, and to actually simulate this texture over time, so if we want our sprite to take this, then this one, then this one over time, and to actually simulate the explosion, or rather simulate the change of this texture, we're using this sub UV, and start frame is 0, end frame is 64. So how do we calculate the 64 one? It's pretty simple. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wait up. Yeah, I miscalculated. There are 8 here and 8 here, which of course is 64. So this is how we calculate this, and this will actually simulate some movement, because it will change the sprite every, it will change the sprite from 0 to 64 for the entire life of this particle. So this is how we create the smoke. Of course, we have add velocity in cone. This is to create this, you see, we have a circle here, and it does I guess radio like velocity in a circle and expands. This is what this add velocity in column is doing. Pretty simple, nothing complicated. This mode here, it's created the same way, but instead of add velocity in column, I just add velocity. And I have the same thing, but instead of I guess I'm using sphere here as well. It's just different settings on the sphere. Nothing complicated. And the last one is not the last one, sorry. But the energy ground is again a plane and a material with moving texture. So if I go to this plane, I have this the same plane actually used here. So it's pretty easy. So here actually I'm overriding the material of this plane, so I'm actually using this material. And I created this material with just very simple material that you can create. Here are the nodes, and you can just copy these nodes and do this radial gradient exponential. This is for our mask, yeah, it's nothing really complicated. So yeah, this is how I created this shader here. And the last one is the energy ground, which is the same shader as this one, but instead, well, not the same. I mean, this one is again translucent. So if it's translucent, it can go dark. So you can use a dark color here, and we need this for contrast. So yeah, this is all the elements of the effect, and the effect is looks like that. It may not be that good of effect or whatever, but it actually has, after I added the particles, it kind of has anticipation. It has culmination, and you see this is dissipation. And the colors I actually have brightness here, like on my rocks, have dark colors. My range is not that good. This effect doesn't have that good range, but as value goes, doesn't have that good range, but yeah, it's a pretty simple effect. And you can start with simple effects like this, and or not, you can actually use all the principles, all the things that you learned, and actually create a lot better VFX than this. So yeah, I am looking forward to seeing anyone. If someone creates a VFX, please show me. I really want to see what you can do. Before I end this video, I want to show you one very helpful resource. This is actually a document that was created by Riot Games, the people that created League of Legends, and this is a visual effect guide, the complete guide to creating visual effects. You can learn a lot of stuff from here, and as you see, it's the same things I talked about, and there is a lot of useful, helpful things that you can learn from this document. So I'm going to leave the link in the description, so you can actually have a look at it yourself. And I highly recommend, you see they explain the value here, and I highly recommend you read this. It's very useful, very helpful, and I'm pretty sure you're going to benefit from this if you are trying to create VFX. So yeah, that's something I wanted to share. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something today. If you enjoyed it and you want to see more, you can subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it. And yeah, if you want to ask any questions, please post it in the comment section. I'm going to answer everything. And yeah, I enjoyed doing this one. I really like VFX, and I'm going to do more videos about VFX in the future. So if you're interested, stay tuned. Bye for today.